welcome back to my channel. My name is Julia, and today I will be walking you through my New York City apartment hunting process. So for those of you who have been watching my vlogs for a while or have been following my content, you know that I used to live in New York City pre-pandemic, and then during the pandemic I moved back home upstate to my parents' place, and now I am finally looking to make the move back. So today I'll be sharing with you all what I was looking for in an apartment, so my non-negotiables and my nice to haves, the budget that I was working with, and just some overall information around requirements for renting an apartment in New York City. And then obviously, lastly, I'll be showing you guys 10 different apartments that I viewed, and I will also be sharing with you all the final apartment that I chose, which I eventually signed. So with that, let's just get started with the video. Okay, real quick, 2 disclaimers to level set everyone before we get into the video. The first one is that New York City is very expensive. So in one of my previous videos, the Hell's Kitchen apartment tour, some people were leaving comments like, damn girl, you're paying $1,500 to live in like a flexed living room. Yeah, I did pay $1,500 to live there, and that was like a steal for me, because in that video I was like, this is a steal. I'm getting all these great amenities in this location for $1,500. That is a steal here in New York City. Like, I have friends who live in Connecticut and they pay less than that for a full, true 1-bedroom all to themselves with washer dryer in unit. But that's just not what you should expect if you move to New York City for that price. The second disclaimer is, do not expect COVID prices anymore if you are looking for an apartment currently. This is my 3rd time going through this entire New York City apartment hunting process, and this has been the biggest struggle ever. Like, this has been the worst round of apartment hunting for me. I think a big reason is also due to just the housing market and its fluctuations throughout this past year. So when the pandemic started, the pricing of all of these apartments just tanked. Like, it was the lowest of the lows that I've ever seen. There were quite a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they took advantage of those deals and they snagged some really nice apartments for some absurd prices. Like, they didn't have to pay a broker's fee, they had months off their rent, they were living in like beautiful luxury apartments that typically would go for like 3.5K, but now they're paying like 2 to 2.5K for it, which is crazy. And I guess when I was going into this apartment search over the summer, which was like 1 month ago, I also expected these prices, which is wrong. I don't think there are any more COVID deals, to be honest. It's definitely not a renter's market right now. It's actually quite tough because everyone is moving back into the city. There are a lot of articles out there with more stats to back things up, but this is just my personal experience. So all in all, 2 takeaways. The first one is it's very expensive to live here in New York City, so set your expectations very high for rent. And number 2 is that there's no more COVID pricing for any of these apartments anymore. So do not expect that. All right, so let's go through what I was looking for in a New York City apartment. For my non-negotiables this time around, I was looking for a studio or 1-bedroom apartment. This is going to be the first time that I'm living by myself. I really wanted to live in Manhattan, specifically Lower Manhattan. So that leads me to my 3rd requirement, my non-negotiable for sure, which is lots and lots of sunlight. It either needs to have an elevator in the building or it needs to be no more than a 4th floor walk up. And lastly, I wanted in-building laundry. So if you live in New York, you know that this requirement already filters out quite a lot of apartments. A lot of places don't have laundry in building, let alone in unit, so you'd have to go to your local laundromat to get your laundry done. I've experienced that before in Astoria, and then I moved to Hell's Kitchen where I had in building laundry, and literally, so yeah, I don't think I can revert back to taking my laundry outside and doing it somewhere else. So that was it for the list of hard requirements, my non-negotiables. And for my nice to haves, I really only had 2. So the first one is some form of outdoor space, whether it be a balcony, courtyard space, backyard, or like a rooftop lounge. And the second nice to have is like more closet space. Closet space in New York City is definitely a gamble. Sometimes you'll find a place with like numerous closets, and then sometimes you might find a place with like one singular like linen closet, and then you'll have to buy a wardrobe. And I do have quite a lot of things. I am a hoarder. I also own a lot of clothing pieces. That's mostly it for me. So having that extra closet space would be really nice. So in terms of budget, because I am living by myself and I'm looking for either a studio or a 1-bedroom, it is going to get a lot pricier. So I'm looking for an apartment somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500. Obviously, if it costs less to get what I want, great. But that is the price range that I'm comfortable spending. And I know that it is not a trivial amount of money to pay every month. So I'm very fortunate and thankful to be able to afford an apartment in this price range. I really do not want to pay the max amount. I think ideally somewhere in the middle would make me pretty happy, like $2,300, $2,200. And obviously if it's at the lower end or even less than my budget, amazing. But that is what I'm currently working with. Alrighty, and then lastly, I'll go over very quickly some documentation that you need to have on hand if you were to apply for an apartment. If you already know all this, please feel free to skip to the next chapter. All of these sections will be broken up, but this is for those of you guys who are interested in moving here and would like some more information. So here are some typical documents that you should have on hand if you're looking to apply for an apartment in New York City. The first is 2 forms of photo identification. I usually have my driver's license and passport photos on hand. If you're a working professional, you'll need a proof of employment from your employer. And if you're a student, you'll just need your student transcript. Your tax returns. I had my 2020 and 2019 tax returns. You'll also need some proof of funds, whether that be your most recent bank statements. Some landlords also accept portfolios, savings, retirement funds, anything like that. In addition to that, your most recent pay stubs. I had to submit my most recent 3. And lastly, some places need like a previous landlord recommendation letter. My previous landlord was my mom, so I had that waived and that is about it. Alright, so on to the fun part of the video. I will now be showing you guys the 10 apartments that I toured. I toured more than 10, but these were the 10 that I filmed. Some of these places were not worth filming, so I'm just going to spare you guys that. And with that, let's start off with the first apartment. So apartment number 1 was in Chelsea. Chelsea is a really great place to live, very bougie, very expensive. It was pretty central. It had really good subway lines. This apartment was actually really nice. So it ticked off all of my requirements. It was on the 5th floor, but it had an elevator. There was laundry in the basement. The entire place looked newly renovated, really white walls, very bright, great view from the window. I can see the Empire State Building, and it was super sunny. There was ample closet space. The closet could be a little bit bigger, but it was a good amount. It also had extra storage at the top. The bathroom was super clean, and I like how there's that extra window at the end of the hallway too, to let in some additional light. it also had a rooftop with immaculate views. The only thing about this apartment was that it was on the higher end of my budget at $24.95, but there was no broker's fee. I toured this apartment with my friend and I was just like, what do I do? Like, do I submit an application? Because it does fit all of my requirements. It technically is in my budget, but I don't know. I'm just like thinking like, Julia, you cannot sign the first apartment that you see. And so I was a bit wishy-washy on it. And there was actually a second unit in the same building that opened up that day. And so I went downstairs to see that too. So that is the second apartment, still in the same Chelsea building. This one was on the 3rd floor and it was facing the back. This unit was definitely a bit smaller, a lot dimmer, and it had a little less closet space. It had 2 smaller closets, so maybe it added up, but the appliances were definitely older. So I actually ended up submitting an application for the first unit, and I didn't get it. That is how competitive the landscape was. I took maybe like 2 hours to ponder, and when I was touring that place, as you can see in the video, there were just so many people also looking at it. And by the time I submitted my application, they already had like 15 applications in, so they didn't even look at mine. A little sad still, because I think that was a great unit. The point of the story is you snooze, you lose. So we move onwards. For the third apartment, this was also located in Chelsea, but the first 2 apartments, it was in Lower Chelsea near 14th Street, and this apartment is near like 23rd Street, so a little bit more uptown. For this apartment, I actually contacted the broker to see a different unit, but when I got there, they told me that that specific unit was already rented and that they can show me a different unit in the same building. This isn't the first time that something like this has happened. I think it's very normal for brokers to do this in the city, where they'll advertise one unit, but then they'll show you a different unit, and that's just the rule of the game. So this place wasn't terrible, but it was just not what I expected, because the other unit was very large and bright and beautiful. This unit was fairly small. It only had one really small closet. The bathroom was okay, and then the living space was also pretty small. The space just felt very cramped. And although there was actually a south-facing window, I didn't like how it was on parallel with someone's roof, and that's why there were the bars. So I don't know, I'm always scared that someone can like break in, so I don't particularly like living on the first floor or somewhere where like your window is easily accessible to other people for safety issues. And this place was going for $2,400 if I remember correctly, which was quite absurd. All right, for the fourth apartment, I kind of strayed away from one of my non-negotiables, which was below 34th Street. So this apartment was actually around Times Square. I don't know, at this point I was getting so desperate because I have already been looking for 2 to 3 weeks, and I really wanted to find a place by the end of July. And so I saw this place, it looked really nice, and I was just like, I have time, why don't I just go take a look? This place went for $2,400, and there were actually quite a lot of good things about this apartment. Specifically, there was an in-unit washer dryer, although it was oddly placed in the bathroom in front of the toilet. That is a different story, but it was definitely a really nice thing to have. The appliances in the kitchen were all new. I really liked the ceiling with the exposed beams. I also really loved the alcove where I would have put the bed, and then there was still ample space for the sofa and other things. This building also had an elevator, which was really nice, I think the deciding factor for me was just that it was literally in the heart of Times Square. It was located on top of Ichiran, and I could have had ramen every single day, but yeah, I just decided not to move forward with this apartment because Times Square is just a really hectic place to live. The fifth apartment that I looked at was located in East Broadway, and I love LES, so I was really excited to look at apartments around this area. So this apartment was a 1-bedroom, and I loved how new everything was. Very newly renovated. The shower was freaking gorgeous. The bathroom was sparkling clean, and I liked how there was a section off between like the living room and the bedroom, although it made it look kind of cramped for some reason. I think it's because the space itself was already small to begin with, but all of the appliances in the kitchen were new. It did have windows facing north though, and I didn't really like the scaffolding because you never know like when that construction work is going to be done, and I'm assuming that because there is scaffolding that there's also going to be construction noises, and since I still am technically working from home, it's just not gonna be great. It was like bright daytime when I looked at that apartment, and it was pretty dark. I did like the closet though. The lights turned on automatically when you opened the closet doors. There were also quite a lot of things wrong with the apartment building. When I was looking at the apartment, they didn't have gas, and the broker told me that it was because of like some permit issues or whatever, and because of COVID it got delayed, so there's no gas currently. It was also in a walk-up building on the 3rd floor though, but it didn't have any laundry. This place was also at the max of my budget, so it was $2,500, but I did try to negotiate with the broker since there were quite some things that were wrong with the building, like the construction and the no gas. So I asked for $2,250 and they actually said yes. I like negotiated down, and I was just like, actually I'm not gonna take it. So I felt kind of bad, but I just think that there were some problems that were going to arise if I did sign onto this building that wasn't 100% complete. And so I decided to not go with this apartment. So the next place was located in Nolita, and Nolita is this really nice central walkable place in between like Soho, LES, and Chinatown. So yeah, I frequent all of those places quite a lot, so this was literally the ideal place for me to settle down. Except for that I didn't really like the apartment. This was one of those apartments where the pictures looked beautiful because they like photoshopped it and put in like fake furniture, but then when you view it in person, it's a whole other story. So the apartment was on a 5th floor walk-up with no elevator, sadly. It was quite spacious, however, it only had one small closet, and it was obviously not very well cleaned before the showing. It is a little old, however, there was really good ample lighting, 2 large west-facing windows with nothing really obstructing the view, so a lot of good light came in. And there was also 1 south-facing window in the dining room area, which also brought in a good amount of light. This apartment might look okay through camera, but when I viewed it in person, it was just hella dirty, especially the shower area. I don't think that it can be cleaned. I think it just needs to be renovated. In terms of laundry, there was no laundry in building, but there was a laundromat right next door, so that was okay, I guess. This apartment was going for $2,500 a month, which was mind-boggling to me because it's just so nasty. So obviously I did not sign this apartment, and I think it actually stayed on the market for quite a couple days. The next apartment was located in Chinatown, and I love Chinatown. I spend quite a lot of time there, especially my Sundays where I just want to chill, eat some really good food, and grab like fresh produce and groceries. And so I really would love to live there if the opportunity arose. And so I found this really inexpensive listing that like popped up out of nowhere on Street Easy. And it was on like Mott Street, which is the main street of Manhattan's Chinatown. And so I was a little skeptical because this place was only going for $1,900 for a 1-bedroom. The place when I visited was still under renovation. Everything was getting like renovated, from the kitchen to the bathroom to the living room to the bedroom, everything. And so I felt really good about that because when I move in, everything will be quite new. There was great lighting. It was really nice. The bathroom was just a tad bit smaller than I wanted it to be, but outside of that, everything was great. So a 1-bedroom, newly renovated, lots of light, new appliances for $1,900. What's the scam here? Like what can be wrong with this place? And what was wrong was that there was no intercom system. I don't know, maybe to some of y'all it doesn't really matter, but because this place is on a 5th floor walk-up, every time I get a delivery, I'd have to go downstairs and open the door and then walk back up 5 flights of stairs. If I have guests over, I'd have to go downstairs and let them in. And so it was definitely a big deciding factor. And then obviously the 5th floor walk up and no laundry. Laundry was actually 2 blocks down. It was a really nice, quaint place and I was actually really considering it. But in terms of security with the no intercom system and everything else, I decided not to move forward with it. The next apartment was located in Soho. I don't know about you, but every time I walk through Soho, I am just in awe of all the architecture and the beautiful buildings. And I always think to myself, like, damn, when will I be able to afford to live here? And then I saw this posting on Street Easy for a 1-bedroom apartment in prime Soho for $2,150. And the pictures looked great. So I was like, is this a scam? So I went to check it out and I definitely got catfished. I've never been catfished before in my life, but I feel like I was catfished by this apartment listing because when I viewed the apartment, it looked nothing like the pictures on the listing. So this place was actually quite cramped, which is very different from how the pictures looked. So it's just 2 very small rooms and the living room is also an enclosed room. So it's just a 2-bedroom, I feel like, and no living room. And the weirdest thing was that the shower was located in the kitchen. I remember viewing this and just asking myself what is going on because the shower was right next to the kitchen stove and it was also a whole feet above the ground. So that was an interesting experience, and apparently there is a lot of historical context around why some New York City apartments still have showers in the kitchen, and I'll link that down below for those of you guys who are interested. Before I read this article, I thought that this was an anomaly and I was like, this apartment building is weird, but apparently there are still a lot of apartments out there that have their showers in the kitchen. Anyways, the apartment was super small, super cramped. The floorboards were very uneven and it also just looked kind of dirty. This one was actually on a 6th floor walk up. It never specified what floor on the posting, it just said apartment number 17. So I was like, okay, I can try to estimate it, but maybe max like 4th floor, fingers crossed. But then it ended up being like 6th floor walk up and no laundry in building either. So it was a hard no for me for this apartment. So the next apartment was located in LES, and this one was located in prime LES, like right on Houston Street, and I actually quite liked it. It was quaint. So this apartment was on a 4th floor walk-up, and it was more long than it was wide. It had ample closet space plus an additional storage area on the top, and it had really big windows with great views. And although it was facing north, because it was on Houston Street, there were no other buildings blocking the window, so actually there was quite a lot of light coming in, and it was also a rainy day, so I already liked that. It also had a really good view. And then in terms of the other areas, I liked how open the kitchen was. There was also an extra window there. And then the bathroom was also just newly renovated with also another window, which is really good because there was light coming in from all aspects of the apartment. The only thing that this apartment lacked was laundry. So at this point, I was already like 6 months into my apartment hunt, and I was desperate to settle down. I was like really desperate. So I didn't think too much about this. I literally left. I was the second person to view this apartment. I walked down the street, planted myself at a coffee shop, and applied through my phone because I had all of the documents on my phone. And it was just like me zooming in and trying to like type everything. So if you watch my vlogs, there was this one little snippet of me being really excited about submitting an application. So, some very exciting news. I decided to submit an application for an apartment that I just saw. I have been having the worst luck with applications and with apartments, but this one I can wholeheartedly say that like I'd be really happy living here, so fingers crossed. I'll keep you updated. And I have an update for y'all. I didn't get it. So that is that. I was 15 minutes too late because when I was sitting in the coffee shop and filling out the application on my little iPhone, someone already submitted it before I did. So I did not get this apartment, but it is okay because I found a better one. So the moment that you have all been waiting for, the last apartment. After 6+ weeks of struggling, I finally came across an apartment that I liked. So like all the other apartments, I found this apartment through StreetEasy, and I actually contacted the broker to view a different unit in this building, and they called me back asking what are my top 3 things that I'm looking for in an apartment. And the first one I said was good lighting. And they very bluntly told me that that unit that I was looking at didn't have good lighting and it was actually quite dark, but they'll let me know if there is another unit available anytime soon. So a week later, the broker actually calls me back and told me that there was a tenant who's trying to break their lease and that it was in a studio that was much brighter than the one that I was looking at. And also they haven't listed this on StreetEasy yet. And if I wanted to, I can come in and take a look before they put it online. So obviously I took the opportunity. I came in as soon as I can, and I ended up really liking this place. So when I toured this place, the previous tenant was still living here and they gave me permission to film. And I also did like how their furniture was still here, so I can kind of see how much stuff can fit in this studio. So first off, the bathroom, I really liked how clean it was. It's very modern, obviously it looks recently renovated, very spacious as well. Into the living space, it's just a really big square. It is a little small, but I do appreciate how tall the ceilings are because it makes the space feel a little bit bigger than it actually is. Obviously, the windows are the main point of attraction here in the apartment. There's 3 of them and they bring in a really good amount of light, especially from early morning into early afternoon because they are east-facing windows. Onto the kitchen, this is actually labeled as has a kitchenette because it is kind of small, but it does have all the appliances that I need, including a small stove, an oven, and fridge. It did have a limited amount of counter space, which I wasn't a big fan of, but I liked how the old tenant had a rolling cart next to the kitchen, so that would potentially provide more surface area to cook. Also, if I recall correctly, this was the first place that had not one, but 2 big closets, in addition to another storage section up at the top. So I was really satisfied with the amount of storage space that this apartment had. One thing that I did not like though is that the windows faced a brick wall. And this made me ponder a lot around if I wanted to sign this apartment. It's a really weird situation because the number one thing on my checklist was ample sunlight, and this apartment gets so much sunlight, especially in the morning and into the afternoon as well. But it's like facing this odd brick wall, but because the brick wall and the next building is short and a little far away, still a lot of light comes in. So I really had to question myself, does the view matter a lot, or does like the amount of light actually matter? And obviously, ideally, I would have a lot of light plus a nice view. So this apartment checked off every single thing on my list. Although the windows are facing a weird brick wall situation, it is a studio, it's within my price range, it has all the building amenities that I want, it even has that extra closet storage space as well. So at the end of the day, I signed. I submitted an application and it got accepted because this place was never shown to anyone else. And it feels good. It feels good to finally tell you guys that I'm not nomadic anymore and that I have a place to stay. So I'm actually filming in the new place. More to come. I have a moving in vlog that's gonna come up, and I'm gonna slowly start to decorate and furnish the space. So I hope you all follow me along in this journey of living by myself in New York City. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I know this has been such a long video, so really thank you for those of you who have watched until here. Remember to comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!